It's wonderful to find humility in all experiences we go through. Fifth chapter. It is small, but gives us a clue of what it means and what it's based on. It greatly capitalizes on the teaching of the fourth chapter. It gives us complete teaching on the fifth plane of causality, cause and effect, karma without sin, and the will of God for those who are not Buddhist and have a training in your life to conceive what is the will of God. You're a saint when you do the will of God. What does that mean? Where does it come from? Okay. So of every aspect of causality, cause and effect, are summarized in that little chapter. What do you think, Subhuti? Is it possible to grasp the Tathagata by means of bodily signs? Bodily signs is signs that you do with your body, okay? Farting is not a bodily sign. It's a bodily phenomenon, okay? What we need bodily signs is when he was talking before of the senses, the perception, okay? No, we're all in one. When the Tathagata speaks of bodily signs, there are no signs being talked about. Well, just learning this by heart, actually by head, just learning that phrase, there are no signs to be talked about, everything is illusion. That's not understanding the profound Dharma. So we want to go further, okay? The Buddha said to Subhuti, in a place where there is something that can be distinguished by signs, in that place there is deception. If you can see the signless nature of signs, then you can see the Tathagata. So the key to understanding the entire 5th chapter is, if you can see the signless nature of signs, it does endorse that there are signs. There are signs in nature. It does endorse that there is nature, that it exists. There is nature. And this nature has signs. You have to start with that. And then you proceed to the signless aspect. If you dwell on the idea that there are no signs to be talked about, a bit like Subhuti still had the idea of the false conception of illusion and it doesn't exist, the Buddha once again re-expresses it in the clearest possible form. There is nature, there is signs in nature, and those signs are signless. And then there's the other way to say it. The signless nature of signs, which is written here. When nature then is not the signs in nature, but the nature is used in terms of property. There is a property to a sign. So a sign really does exist, or else it would have no nature, no property, no aspect to talk about. So that sign is real, but it is signless. It means nothing. So it's playing on words again. Okay. The 5th plane of causality. 4th plain teaching. You open the door, but you're a hypocrite. You hope for a thank you. Now, when someone opens the door for you, do you say thank you? You should. Out of compassion. As an act of charity. To say thank you for someone, to make them feel good about it. Knowing that they find some kind of value in it. So you should say thank you when something is given unto you. Something is done to you that makes you feel good. I'm just waiting for your ego to get that one. So you should, in a certain way, out of pure charity, gratify someone who just tried to gratify you. In equity, in pure exchange. Does that defy the previous teaching? No, it endorses it. So giving recognition to someone doing something good for you is good. But even then, you're also a hypocrite. Someone opens the door to you and you go through. And if you would not say thank you, it wouldn't be polite. And you would be looked down by that person of not having a good education. So therefore, you're not grateful for the person opening the door. You're just making sure they still think you're great for being trained as a good puppy dog and say thank you when someone helps you. So, when you open the door to someone and seek value or a sign from the outside, you're a hypocrite. It's not real charity. And when you say thank you to someone helping you, you're a hypocrite. You're not really grateful. So if someone says thank you to you, it is a sign. But that it is a sign that signifies that they got your charity. So you don't want to base your charity on those signs, but when they come, you should welcome them. However, those signs don't even mean that they're grateful until they experience charity themselves, purely, with no sign. Where they wouldn't say thank you as a recognition for the door that was opened, but as a recognition of how great you are for having opened it in the pure sense of bodhisattva. In other words, when you are grateful to someone, you're not. You're just signifying, I hope that you love me too. So you say thank you for you to get more love from the person who gave it in the first place, opening the door. In other words, the sign that you get if you open the door, the sign that you get of gratitude doesn't have any real value to it. Because you too would do it out of hypocrisy until you reach a pure state of mind of bodhisattva, of just coming and going, like the Tathagata. Do you understand that? That this sign still had no value once you understand it, and that the nature of that sign is signless. So any sign that comes to you to gratify you from the outside has no value. If you endorse the teaching of charity that and only a pure action without validation has a value for your being and makes you feel great and wonderful with no measure, then those signs cannot bring you that greatness. Therefore, they have no value. So in the principle of causality, an action does not validate another. It just causes another. And they just succeed. And that is how the Tathagata walks in life. By recognizing the signless nature of signs, the worthlessness of whatever you would gain of any action, then an action simply has a consequence, but it still doesn't validate you in any way. So even those signs that you think that you use to validate yourself doesn't really validate you. Because them too are based on some other ego mechanics that tries to get yet another validation out of you who seek validation for an action you just did. And all of this is empty. There's no value transaction in nothing. Because value does not exist. Breed. That's a hard one, eh? But if you had done an act of charity based on an object of how you do it, or a sign for what would return from it, if you understand the pure wisdom that the object and the sign are valueless, then whatever sign you would give back to someone doing an act of charity is also empty. There is no causality in the transaction of value or worthlessness. There is no happiness given as a result of an action aiming to gain happiness. The happiness is in the thing done, and that's it. Let's take different examples. Breathe. And now you can feel how worthless you are when you try to make people feel good. And you're just manipulating them into loving you. And if you're very wise, you'll manipulate them in loving themselves until they are free of these principles and can find pure value and pure love and great happiness out of their own existence or actions as they are. Until they reach that point, the wisdom of expedient means requires us to use their flaws in their own favor to get them to that point where they will get it. In other words, if someone opens the door, say thank you to make them feel good, until they learn to feel good for just opening the door. Okay? Breathe. The 5th chapter is based on the 5, and both the Buddhist, the Hindu, the occultist, and the Kabbalist have agreed on the principles of numerology. Why? Because they have observed the world, and this is what the number is about. Potential action. So the 5th plane of causality of what succeeds in action, which is another. The signless nature of sign, and this is how to free yourself of the suffering of karma. Your karma will still fall on you, but it will not mean anything. It will just be the result of previous actions that were now when it happened. They happened in the present. And the karma also happens in the present. In the there. Okay? And that is how he speaks of this, how the Tathagata gets that experience. Where something does not mean something, it just happens. Because you believe that opening the door was going to give you some kind of value from another with the thank you. And then you were free from that, and then you believe that the thank you you give gives value to another, which is actually a way to say, look how good I am as an action of charity, saying thank you because I don't have to, and hoping that you'll feel happy, I feel thank you, which will give me that value as a sign. Now, it's just another layer of that 4th plane hypocrite charity, you know, just throwing each other the ball, how great we are, one for opening the door, the other for gratifying the other, for saying thank you, and being so great about it. I'm such a good being for being grateful for other people who being so good beings. You just masturbate your value one another, you know. You go home empty and depressed and wonder, why do I feel so abandoned? Because you spend your life seeking this experience of fulfillment outside of you through those futile actions. And if you do everything solely to do it for what you experience out of it, and out of equity for everyone to grow about it without necessarily coming back to you as how great you are, you're not depleting yourself. No, part of this equity deal is that you're one of those you have to care for, so you're also taking care of yourself as much as others. In equity mean all being, including you. Giving everything you've got and ending up empty is not equity and it's not charity. That's playing the savior and ending up empty, and then you suffer your own hypocrisy. You understand that, huh? So charity and equity, these actions of pure charity, taking care of yourself and others, where evenly everyone grows, as nature gave you means to do so, and you do it for the sake of doing it, then you gain so much happiness, and you go home and you're not empty and alone. Because your happiness is based on what you are, and while you're home, this is where you are. Therefore, your home is where your body is, as long as you believe in the body experience. And don't pretend that you don't believe in the body, because shit you do. You know, oh, the body's an illusion. I've heard in my mind that it's an illusion, so the body's an illusion, I don't have it. Don't bullshit me. Until you know yourself as God, don't even pretend that you are. Just strive to discover that you are. While you believe there is a God to be, and that you could be it in unity, then do it. But don't go into this idea that others might want to think you have gained it when you didn't. I'm just speaking of an idea of those who say, I'm God, I know I'm God, I read it in the book, I've practiced many years of I'm God, so I know it. No. Until you experience the unified consciousness of all things, you don't know that you're God. And when you really get it, like the Buddhists don't say it's God, but the Christians and Hindu here, they do, so I'll say the word. We speak of unified consciousness, which is about the same thing. No, words are just words. When you get the pure unity of all things, you look at the other, and you know the other is God, and it has nothing to do with you. I don't need you to know that I feel that I'm one with all things. What does it bring to you? It's useless. I want you to know that you're one with all things, or else whatever I experience has no more value if it doesn't serve the whole. So unity is lived in the principles of unity, therefore equity has to be endorsed. And if you live any kind of oneness or greatness that is not for everyone to live it, then it's futile and useless, and you should drop it yourself. Read. So while you believe in the body, although you learn in your Buddhist training that there is no body to believe in because you don't exist out of the bullshit of misunderstanding the teaching of illusion, because everything is, although all is real and you forgot it was, because your mind is filled with the bullshit of misunderstanding. I'm sorry for the translators in the back. But it was fun when I said it, wasn't it? It's not required for you to follow all these words and teachings. It's for you to share the experience. When you say, my body does not exist, therefore there's no bodily signs, and there is no nature. And the Buddha said, there are bodily signs, but don't believe in them. There is a signless nature to those signs, therefore these signs exist. And you have a body and you believe you are separated. And while you believe that you are separated, even if you're trained to believe you're not, while the experience of life is obvious, you feel it in a state of separation, because you go back home and you're lonely. And you wanted to be gratified by others and they didn't. While you are here in this reality, believing it to be real, even if you call it illusion because you were trained to do so, it is your reality. It hurts because you still have something based on the science. That's why it hurts, and that is karma. And when you're freed from the signs and their value and their meaning, there will still be signs and there will still be karma, but you won't take it personal. Oh, that is just the result of an action I did. Doesn't mean I'm an asshole, it just means I'm gonna have to pay my bill. I'm happy I've got the service before. Okay, I pay my bill because I get the service. In the world of illusion, everything should be free. Well, look at that, we believe it to be reality, so pay up. What is the will of God in a culture or philosophy where you have defined a God and you have defined its will, when what should the will of God be? Is God someone? Does he have intention? If he has intention, makes no sense to me, but let's say he has intention, then he could have a will. And if he has a will, then what is his will? Is it obeying the laws you've learned in a human church? How competent are humans to identify the will of God? Is it to obey a certain set of rules? What is the will of God? Save people from suiciding themselves or else they go to hell? What is the will of God? If the will of God is based on a set of rules that you have learned as humans in a human gathering, in a cultural phenomenon, then in another church, another religion, another part of the world, maybe another planet, if you dream that aliens have Christian, Hindu, Buddhist parallel religion, maybe all the aliens are Muslim, then that would be a great disrespect, both for the aliens or the Muslims, because they are great too. Don't classify anyone, please. Allahu Akbar. God is great, isn't he? If he exists, then he should be. If God isn't great, then we should make one that is. Of course God is great in the undefined God, but actually God makes more sense if he is undefined. Therefore he could not have intentions based on human feelings. Therefore his will cannot be any rule, because if it's rules of something you have to do to follow the will of God, then another religion has a different set of rules, and then they're contradicting. If God is one in all things, he could not contradict himself. Therefore, it can't be based on the rules that you've learned. So you don't know what it is to follow the will of God. Do you understand that so far? I'm just using these arguments to disengage the idea that the will of God is following a set of rules. What does God do? He cares. God cares. So the will of God is not what he does or what you should do and what he wants you to do. It's what he does, period. The will of the Buddha, the will of unified consciousness, the will of Om, of all undistinct intentions summarized into a single, where all consciousness thrives into a single state of evolution. Then the will of God is not what he wants you to do, it's what he does, and you just have to do the same. Care. There's only one will of God, if there is a will of God. Care. For you. For others. Iniquity. Equally. Oneness is oneness, and it's not separated from you. If you care only for others and it prevents you from reaching a certain level of comfort or happiness, then you don't get it. That is not charity. That's some kind of martyrdom, self-sacrifice as a savior to purchase other people's attention. Woo! Wow. The will of God cannot be anything that he wants you to do, because that would be interpreted as rules of what you should do, taken from other interpretations of what humans believe it could be, and then necessarily one will be flawed, and you go into this idea that one religion is better than the other. We follow the will of God, not the others. I mean, both are saying that, so you got 50-50 chance of being wrong right there. You know, it doesn't make sense. But everyone agrees at one point God cares, and this is what he does. And if you want to be one with all things, when you should do what the oneness does, care. Oh, Maheshwar is so poetic when he speaks. I like it. Then humility is not doing the will of God. Humility is the will of God. Humility is caring. Because caring is pure charity, not based on objects or signs. You just care, pay attention, and care in the measure of your capacities, competence, and abilities and resources. Rereading chapter 5. What do you think, Subhuti? Is it possible to grasp the Tathagata by means of bodily signs? In that question, the Buddha signifies it's possible to grasp the Tathagata. He's suggesting it's not through bodily signs, but he endorses that there is the way to grasp Tathagata. Therefore, that all humans can reach it. Therefore, that whoever thinks enlightenment is unachievable are completely off track because you can reach it. Tathagata is an enlightenment. Enlightenment is on the third bhumi. Tathagata is after the seventh. Right? When you just take things as they are, it just happened. That's why he takes Tathagata on the fifth plane. On the fifth chapter, the causality of steps happening as they are, and then it's not karma, it's just another step, and thus he just arrived, he came. Okay, that's Gandalf in the Lord of the Ring. A mage is never late or in advance. He arrives precisely at the moment he intended to. Okay, that's Tathagata. Gandalf is a Tathagata. Still had to go through experiences. Of course, it's a movie and every metaphor is a flaw. Stop that metaphor there, alright? So humility is stopping your quest for signs. Then you're just there when you're there. Read. Now, humility is a virtue of the first plane. And we remember the first paragraph was care, eat, clothing, shelter, health. And in the fifth chapter, an inspiration of taking things as they are. And the effort to recognize the signless nature of signs, being freed from the nature that could have sign, or the signless nature of those signs in nature. Regardless, any way you want to look at that, there is something, it is real, and you must be freed from what it means. And just take it because it's there. Right? The answer, Subhuti, no, World on one. When the Tathagata speaks of bodily signs, there are no signs being talked about. That's Subhuti's interpretation. And Subhuti is not yet accomplished. So the Buddha will answer again in a place where there is something that can be distinguished by signs. In that place there is deception. Now look at the interaction of Subhuti and Tathagata. if the Tathagata agrees that someone said something at the purest level, usually he says, yes, yes, that is exact. I love that you just said that. That's okay. Here, he doesn't. He just repeats what he wants to teach. So, Subhuti understanding that there are no signs to talk about. The Buddha does not necessarily disagree, but he didn't confirm or agree. Nonetheless, he will just repeat, there are signs. In a place where there is something that can be distinguished by signs, he endorses, yes, there are signs being talked about. As Subhuti is saying, there are no signs being talked about. The Buddha says, there are signs being talked about. In that place there is deception. So there is a place. It's real. And there is a deception. Each time we prefer the wisdom of those answering to the Buddha instead of the wisdom of the Buddha himself, the Sakyamuni, Tathagata. We gain this false interpretation of what he meant. Just go back to what the Sakyamuni said. There is a causality. There is stuff happening. If you can see the signless nature of signs, then you can see the Tathagata. And in this place, the people call Sakyamuni the Tathagata. But Sakyamuni, as a Tathagata himself, doesn't call the Tathagata as a title exclusive to him. He never said anything, I am the one and only Tathagata. He never said that. He said that's how you can grasp the Tathagata. So in this chapter of causality, he's saying you can do it. There is a reality that you can free yourself from the value of its meaning and then exist in the state of Tathagata yourself. That's how you can grasp the principles. Or else I misunderstood everything, and grasping the Tathagata is taking Sakyamuni in your arms. Probably not. It doesn't feel real Dharma, you know. Grasping the Tathagata as the principles of what it means, even how abstract it could be. If the Tathagata is a single being, then you don't get what that single being is telling you about you grasping it. How to just come and go and stop being affected by the objects and the signs. But you're still here, coming and going. That is a teaching of simplicity. And look at how much there's pressure inside here. Eh? Some of you really lived experience. Your walls are breaking. Your fortress is crushed on itself. The Tathagata is not just someone that comes and goes, or you dwelling. It's you dwelling in that state of caring, of pure charity, as a bodhisattva doing singular actions of charity, until you become a mahasattva, accomplished yourself. And whatever you do has an impact on the whole of life forms. Humanity, but life forms altogether. Everything just grows out of whatever you do. Like when I teach you and you grasp something, how many more of you will be more humble and powerful in your charity, hence affecting so many more. And that is the actions of a Mahasattva that has a larger scale effect. Excuse sometimes when I copy paste, from French to English directly. All of the words are not that perfect. Don't you enjoy this? The possibilities it gives you, the freedom and the pain of having no more value to anyone else. And whatever inside still fights, those potentials inside that want recognition. Those potentials inside that want recognition are boiling in a teaching like this. There are 27 other chapters to this sutra. It's an entire 9-day boot camp just to interpret the whole of the sutra in the way that I want to teach it, where you can't flee in any misconception of what it meant and where it comes from. And also endorsing, it doesn't mean that I have fully grasped it and you should not trust me. Maybe I'm just another guy very inspiring, but full of bullshit. What matters is you get something out of it. You grow. You're elevated. You feel it opens doors. So if you gain something out of those dialogues we have together, then this has value for you. And then it's not because you trust me that you come to my teaching. It's because you gain something out of it and you accept it, you endorse it. You want to go through it again. You want to live something. So that's why you do it. It's not because of an exchange of greatness we could have one another. However, whenever we feel like it, and we really feel the world 101 is even in all of us, we would just bow in reverence. Out of gratitude. Because that is real, what you experience. That is real. And the consciousness and the Dharma that is released from that experience is a momentary experience of truth. It's a momentary flavor of truth, the degree of realism. The feeling of being able to walk, act, speak, and live just as you are, humble in pure simplicity, Tathagata. So it was an intense small chapter. Eh? Usually people walk through it in a whiff. For the time that you fart, 5th chapter, we're done. I hope no one heard it, you know. I hope it doesn't smell too bad. That's how you treat the 5th chapter. Your causality, your karma. I hope no one noticed the signs that I farted. That's how you treat the 5th chapter. teaching on karma, simplicity, and Tathagata, and how to just act. Causality, Tathagata. Just go through it. It's okay.